What's up, everybody? It's Jacob with Very Good Knife Company, and today we're going to show you exactly how a Huntsman is made. Now, minus a couple of steps, we're going to start with an 80 CRV2 piece of bar stock steel here. And I have deleted the steps of cutting it out, drilling holes in it, because I've got plenty of other videos on that. Don't need to fill it up with this. So we're just going to get right into the grinding and beveling. We're going to heat treat, and then I'm going to string this video out over the next couple of days and then put it all together once I have gotten through the stages that I need to get through. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, here we go. We're going to take this thing down with a 36 grit belt first, and then we're going to move up to the 120 grit, all on the platinum freehand, and then we'll be ready for heat treat. Now, in real time, that's all it took for me to get close. And what I've got to do now is take this plunge line and square it up perpendicular to this edge, because this slopes. And if I did it according to it laying on the platen, this would be parallel with the face of the handle. However, it would not be 90-degree perpendicular to the edge, which wouldn't look great. So now I'm going to freehand the rest of that bevel in. Okay, so there is one side, rough to the 36 grit. Not bad. Alright, 5 minutes and 55 seconds. And this one is just right. See there? Just straight. And it's nice and thick. That's where I want it. Then I'll take a little bit more material off with the 120 grit. But I've got 3 more to do this stage, so we're going to go ahead and move through those, and then I'll move to the 120. Okay, now we're going to take all our blades, run them across the 120 grit, get rid of the fine or the rough scratches. Then we'll move on to heat treat. So this is what it looks like. That is that. 120 finish, 36 finish, 120 finish. All right, now I got to do the rest of them, and then we'll go heat treat. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty excited because that was the last 4 grinds for the Huntsman run, and it feels really good to finally have them done, to finally have them ground, because it has been a long journey. I'll just say that. There's a lot to grind in these. They take a long time, considering, you know, something adventure size. Man, I can just run through those all day long, but these take some time. Anyhow, I'm happy to have them ground. All right, so the next step is going to be taking them from this old layout die, funky, starting to rust. That's because of all the rust enzymes in my buckets. But now we got to clean these up on the wire wheel. So then we'll go ahead and coat them with anti-scale. All right, so we're gonna coat our blades with anti-scale coating. Then we're gonna stick them into the kiln, pop our recipe buttons in. We've got our oil tanks heating. One of them is already heated, the other one is on its way. It's quenching time. I just did one and I was like, oh, I'm not recording. Second one. Now I have 2 oil tanks because I have a maximum temperature that I don't want my oil to get above before the quenching speed will start to change. So it's real important to make sure that I keep my oil within the range that I need it to be in. Now, most of the time, they'll warp just a micro amount. And that's why I have a correction device on my bench here. You can't see that, but it's just a slot and a piece of wood. Now, that is about as straight as one gets. You can see that beautiful edge there. quenched. Now that's 2 for that oil. We're going to drop this oil tank. Got it cool. Grab our other oil tank. Set it up here. Put your other 2. One. Smoky smoke. So you've got just a small amount of time to correct any warpages, and then they're going to be there. It's going to be too late. So I've got about 30 seconds after the quench to fix them just right. And most of the time, they're end up just perfect, like this one. Just right. I know it's impossible for me to actually show you guys the proper angle of that camera. You're able to see it, but I move them around in the oil because of what is called the Leidenfrost effect. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I've said it in every video that I do heat treating on. Sometimes it's hard to tell perfect straight too when they've got stuff on the sides. Like this one's got a couple pieces of anti-scale coating left on it, and I'm having a hard time telling. So I'll just wipe them off. Go at it again. There we have it. And that is all 4 of them. So those 4 blades that we just heat treated are now in the oven. They will be in there for the next 4 hours. They go through 2 2-hour and 10-minute cycles, cooling in between. So they look like this afterwards, just oil, blued, black. And now we're gonna go ahead and finish grind them, get them ready for handles. So I start with a 60 grit, then move up to a 120, then a 220, then 400. For the edge thickness, we're looking to get that right with the 60 grit and then the 120 grit. After that, it'll just be finishing. So we do the cheeks first and then the bevels before every stage change. And let's go ahead and start on that 60 grit. So there's the 60 grit on the cheek, and now I'm going to do the other side and then all the other ones. Once I've done the cheeks, then I will go through and do the bevels, and it's going to step up like that the whole way. So I'm going to go ahead and time lapse the whole process because it's going to take me forever. Here is the completed 60 grit stage. Here's our 120 finish. That stage is done. Time to move to 220. All right, there's our 220 finish. You see they're starting to get shiny. One more step to go. So we're done grinding. There's our 400 grit finish. Edge thickness the way we want it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to try not to rub them against each other because they'll start scratching. There you have it. So we're ready for the next step, which is etching. Right now we're going to do the Very Good Knife Company logo, and then we're going to do the Huntsman logo on the other side. So I've got my electrochemical etcher all set up and my blade attached to the bench. Let's get after it. There's one side, and we'll go to the grinder after we get the other side done. So we're back at the grinder. We're going to go with the 400 grit belt, which is the last thing that touched it. We'll take these little fuzzy edges off. This is what it looks like before. Like after. That is it. So you've got your Very Good Knife Company and the Huntsman USA. And you can see I could go a little farther. There's just a shade right here. It's really hard to tell though, so I might leave it. Let's see. One more pass. Solved. Huntsman USA. There you have it. Ready for handles. So in my shop, before I do the handles and complete the knife, I like to have a sheath made. That's because I don't like to have finished sharpened knives laying around without sheath. If it's not obvious enough, you could cut yourself. But to me, if I drop the knife or something falls on the knife and it has to go back to the grinder, then it's going to cost me more time. So I like to have a sheath waiting for the knife to be finished. So let's show you how we make the Huntsman sheath and belt loop. First step is put our big old piece of Kydex in the end. All right, so once our Kydex is nice and hot, we're gonna take our mold right here, stuff it down into this taco press, and we are ready to go. See, when it comes out, it's flimsy. And now, just gonna slide this guy down in there. Make sure we push nice and tight so we get a good contact through the spine. Now one day, I would love to have a pneumatic press that I just push a button, squeeze a trigger, and it does all that for me. So we'll wait until that is nice and cool, which is about 3 or 4 minutes. There you have it. 8, 9, 10. All right, now we go to the drill press. There you have it. Let's put the rest of the eyelets in. There we go. Rough. Now we're going to turn around and go to the other grinder. So for the thumb ramp, it's real simple. Just going to go to the heat gun. It's hot. Just use my finger. That's it. Just like that. So that is it for the sheath itself. And at the time of putting the knife in it, I'll do a little bit of adjustment if it needs it to make sure that there's not excessive rattle. I'll also expand this portion right here, open it up a little bit. That way the knife never catches on anything. It's got a nice, clean, wide open, kind of like a flared mag well. You get it. So now we're going to move on to the belt loop. For the belt loop, I use this nice thick piece of 1/8 inch Kydex so it doesn't flex under the weight of the knife. I stick it to my jig here for the belt loop. Go ahead and drill out the holes, stick my pins in, so make sure it doesn't move. Now I use a piece of double-sided tape. I do about 25 of these before the tape starts getting a little icky and not sticky. So let's do that. 1, 2. All right, now those are done. I'm gonna go ahead and put my pins in, make sure that that doesn't move now. Just like this. Go ahead and drill our attachment holes for the eyelets. Now that this is finished, I'm just going to cut off some of the excess. You'll see why here in just a second. All right, let's go to the router. There you have it. The shape is done. No mess with the grinder, none of that. It's exactly the way I want it. So now we got to just put eyelets in this, and then I will use the heat gun to bend this out. And the only thing left to do after that point is just to bolt on our piece of nylon webbing. So I'm gonna just skip that part. So it's time for handles on our knife. And we have already cut out our scales from a sheet of micarta. Here they are. I temporarily attach both sides together. I go ahead and do the faces. And on this handle, we do the front and back. And normally I would just do the front because I end up cutting all the way around the back. But this has got that exposed tang, so we gotta finish both ends before we put them on. Let's go ahead and temporarily attach these to our handle so we can drill our holes and get it ready for countersinking, and then we'll attach it. I use a little bit of alcohol, clean up my tang and one side. That's all. Make sure it doesn't come apart while I'm drilling. And then for all my temporary attachments, like sticking them together and sticking them to the handle temporarily, I use this cheap China glue, super glue, and it's not structural, so that's exactly what I want, is some crap glue that doesn't stick very good. That's what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick a little bit on the handle there. And then I'll line it up. And then I'll go ahead, stick it in the vise for just a second. Now we'll move to the drill press. Now before I go through all the way on any of the holes, I make sure that all of the holes are marked, just in case it came undone. Voila. So now I'm going to go ahead and scribe the handle outline before I detach. And that crappy glue, that's why I wanted crappy glue. I wanted it to come back apart. So before I completely split them, I'm going to take it to the bandsaw and take all this excess off. So we've gone to the grinder, made sure we're flat. We're now going to countersink for our Corby screw heads. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and cut a chamfer for the lanyard hole. We're ready to go attach some handles. Alright, so I've got my one side of Corby screws in. Got some epoxy mixed up here, and I'm going to put a little red Loctite on our screws. Just a dab of red Loctite. and I added I add just a drop of Gorilla Glue, super glue, in between when I put the Corby screws in. That way the heads don't move. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put a super thin layer of epoxy on these handles, real thin. And in truth, with the Corby screws, you don't really need epoxy, but it helps with shock a little bit on the big knives if you're gonna be chopping with them. So we're just gonna do a real thin layer of epoxy. Real thin. All right, and it'll squish in places too. There's one side. I've gone ahead and cleaned my tang real good, made sure it's nice and flat. Let's go ahead and slip this side on. All right, that side's there. Let's go ahead and put a thin coat of epoxy on the other side. Now I usually don't use epoxy on the small knives. You've seen videos where I just stick the handles on, and with the little knives, honestly, I just don't believe in it. I just don't believe that there's any purpose. It's not gonna seal the handle forever. One day, the epoxy will come detached. If anything gets down behind it, then it's all gonna come apart. All right, so go ahead and sticker in the vise here. And I'll do the back 2 screws and the front 2 screws. We got a very, very minimal amount of squeeze out. And then back to that Gorilla Glue, super glue on the very top. Just a dot, 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 and that fills in around the head of the screw. Anyway, now we're gonna tighten these screws nice and tight. I can get about 25, 30 inch-pounds at least on these. Stainless. And if you guys have been following VGK for a while, you'd know that I was doing brass, and I quit doing the brass because I just couldn't get them as tight as I wanted. So now that it's together, I don't need clamps because I got the screws. There won't be any issue with gapping or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off the excess squeeze out. That'll be less to trim with the razor later. And then we'll be ready to go to the grinder. So once the epoxy's cured, I'm gonna go to the bandsaw first, and I'm gonna cut the heads off of the Corby screws. I don't wanna grind them off because it'll make it hot. You'll melt out all that glue. Things will loosen up. So I'm gonna cut them down as close to the handle scales as possible. Then we'll go to the grinder. First, we'll cut everything flush with a 36 grit belt. Now we'll switch around and go to the other grinder. Everything's flushed up. Now we're going to go to a 120 grit belt. jump over to a 220 grit. Before we switch wheels. Back to our 120 grit belt. Swap our big wheel for our small wheel. Okay, so once we've gotten our handle pretty much there, now we're going to go to the router. Go ahead and cut our radius all the way around. Now these, we're not going to hand sand. Everything else I hand sand, but these particular ones, I wanted to leave rough. Gabe wanted me to leave them less than what my normal finish is. So instead of hand sanding, we're just going to go straight from the router, do 400 around the same thing that you just saw us do. And then this knife will be ready to sharpen. Now, if you watched enough of my videos, you'd know that I go 400 grit and then Scotch-Brite normally. But we're gonna go right off the router and leave it grippy. And that's what we wanted for something this big. We want that extra grip, all that we can get. So instead of Scotch-Brite on the micarta, we're just gonna go with 400 grit around the edge. I'm gonna knock the corners down so there's no Sharpies anywhere. And then this knife will be ready to sharpen. There you have 99% of the way finished Huntsman. Now there's a lot of blade cleanup. I'm going to take the razor and get some of that excess epoxy that is still beaded up right in a very little corner. And that stuff's hard to get to, but with a nice clean razor blade, we'll do that. The last step is going to be running our bevels on a Scotch-Brite and just clean them up real good. And then it's time to sharpen. All right, it's time to sharpen this knife, and that's about all there is left to do to it, aside from clean it up. Got a 220 grit belt on my grinder, slow speed. Got my knife and my clamp here. Now this is my own sharpening rig. I made this, and I have a video on it on the channel here. So we're gonna go ahead and get started sharpening. If you made it to the end of this video, congratulations. I'm proud of you. For no other reason other than this was just a long video and it's going to take an entire week to upload. Anyhow, I appreciate you watching because I really enjoyed making this video for you. I don't get to make a whole lot of shop videos as most of the time I'm just running wide open. So here is the finished knife, the Huntsman. Isn't it beautiful? This knife was designed entirely by Gabriel, Last Huntsman Outdoors. Please go give him a follow, subscribe to his YouTube channel because it's an awesome YouTube channel. He just hit 10,000 subscribers. Congratulations, brother Gabe. Guys, 5% of every one of these knives that sells is going to go to Gabe. The first drop of these is going to be August 23rd, Friday, August 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so 7 p.m. Central. Guys, I really appreciate you watching. There's only one more step to this. Isn't that awesome? I'm gonna have to make myself and all my kids and my wife one of these. Awesome. Thank you very, very much for watching. I very much appreciate your support. Very Good Knife Company. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a good one, guys.